Hello and welcome to today's InsightCloud Care for Azure webinar brought to you by Insight. I'm Amanda Sharp, Marketing Specialist at Insight, and will be your moderator today. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is designed to be interactive between you and the presenters. The webcast console you are looking at can be completely customized. You can resize or move any of the windows that you have open. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. All questions from this webcast will be captured. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please visit the webcast help guide by clicking on the question mark icon below the presentation window. The help guide covers common technical issues. I would now like to turn our presentation over to our presenter, Elliott Baretz. Elliott, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate that. So thank you, everybody, for joining this call today. I'm excited to talk to you about InsightCloud Care and what we're doing at Insight regarding our Microsoft practice. And, you know, kind of along those lines, as I go through the conversation, just back to Amanda's note that if you do have a question, feel free to enter it into the chat window. I should be able to see it, and I will try my best to address those questions as I'm going through this, but whatever we don't cover, we will circle back with. Really quick, you know, what I'd like to do before I get into the details of InsightCloud Care for Azure is just quickly provide an overview of Insight for a second, as well as what we're doing in our Microsoft business, just to frame where we're coming from in this offering. And I promise to sort of pull it back to the slide that you have in front of you. So just real quick, in terms of Insight, for those that may or may not be familiar with who we are, we're a global solutions provider. Today, as we present ourselves to the market, we typically talk about our 4 solution areas, which is digital innovation, cloud and data center transformation, connected workforce, and supply chain optimization. And, you know, within each of those practice areas, we have a tremendous amount of expertise and depth and investment in order to provide the best-in-class solutions that we do for our customers. And being able to do it at a very global and a very comprehensive way. So today, if you were, you know, to sort of look at the big numbers around Insight, you know, we have 11,000 teammates worldwide. We're operating in over 19 countries. Of the 11,000 teammates, over 7,500 of them are in the services delivery, business development type areas. So a lot of coverage that we have for our customers, regardless of segment. You know, today we're working with customers that are, of course, global in nature, enterprise in nature, but of course in the SMB as well. So it gives us a whole bunch of footprint to provide the capabilities that we do every day. Of course, one of the areas that we are focused on is Microsoft at Insight. In fact, we are Microsoft's #1 worldwide provider. And that says a ton, you know, in terms of all that we do. And, you know, I could and will go very quickly through some of the nuts and bolts, in that we've got about 1,200 consultants that are Microsoft focused and delivering Microsoft solutions today that, you know, again, we're operating from a Microsoft transactional perspective all over the globe. You know, and you know, in today, a lot of this investment, a lot of this capability manifests itself in just many awards from Microsoft in terms of our ability to deliver these world-class solutions. And I won't go through all of them. You know, of course, you can go to our website to see it, but just in every year after year, we've got probably about a half a dozen elements of recognition from Microsoft as a worldwide leader in delivering solutions around modern desktop or artificial intelligence or IoT or DevOps. And, you know, the list really does go on and on. And in the end, all of this really translates, at least from my perspective, to how do we give and provide our customers the best return on their Microsoft investment. And that's how I'm going to bring us back to this slide here in front of you. You know, I've been in the world of Microsoft for over 20 years, and I've worked with all kinds of different organizations, and I've watched and been a part of investments made, you know, millions of dollars of investments made around Microsoft technology. And the one thing that, you know, I've always recognized is that those investments are incredibly real, and that for the folks that are responsible for making those investments, the implementation of the acquisition of the technology, the implementation of the technology, the management of that technology, the folks that make the decisions to do those things have a lot of responsibility. And they're always very interested in partnering with an organization that they can depend on, that is going to be consistent and is going to be able to look out for the best result and the best outcome so that they can succeed. And so, that's the nature of our mindset here at Insight as it relates to Microsoft. And today, in particular, as we talk about InsightCloud Care for Azure, what we're really talking about is honing in on how to provide the best financial outcome from that Azure investment. And as I talk through this, it'll I think, make more sense. It'll be more of a thoughtful conversation. I like to frame it sometimes in this penny wise and pound foolish note, attributed to Robert Burton, which I was sure it was Ben Franklin until I did my research and learned that it's not. It's Robert Burton. But of course, what the note here is that how we make our investments, we can be short-sighted or long-sighted in how we do it. And certainly when it comes to Azure and when it comes to the public cloud, that'll be part of this. I'm talking about Azure, but the public cloud, the general nature of the public cloud is very similar. And there are very smart ways to acquire and consume the public cloud, and then there are less thoughtful and more short-sighted ways to do it. And my goal today will be to show you an option that I think is providing great value to a number of our customers already. So I'm going to start by representing a couple of data points which I think are very powerful. They both come from Gartner, which most folks understand is an industry analyst, business analyst firm that has a great reputation for providing tremendous insight into the market. No pun intended. I'm trying hard not to do that with the Insight brand. But these stats, are meaningful, and I get them almost immediately, intuitively. The first one, over 2020, Gartner expects that the public cloud market will grow 17%, $266 billion. And, of course, that stat comes, from the beginning of the year, and obviously things have changed in the most recent weeks with COVID-19 crisis. However, what we do know to be true is that the public cloud consumption in general seems to still be growing within the market that we're in right now. There are a lot of good reasons why the cloud framework, cloud infrastructure has advantages in moments like today. So we do continue to expect to see tremendous growth within the cloud marketplace. What most people don't always tune into, but is very real, is that with this growth, there is also a lot of waste. And, of course, Gartner has a stat here. It says $35 billion of cloud consumption will be wasted within 2020. And, I didn't need Gartner to tell me that. To be honest, I have conversations every day, every week, and in those with customers, and in those conversations, I get this sort of direct feedback where, there's tremendous angst and concern around budgets and managing budgets around cloud consumption and being able to really manage that. And that really is at the heart of what we're talking about today, because, there are lots of different ways for cloud consumption to go, sort of sideways. And I'm identifying three scenarios here in this particular slide that translate or contribute to wasted spend and wasted consumption in the public cloud. There's more, of course, but many of us on the call probably are familiar with them. The notion of oversized workloads, not properly understanding what those workloads traditionally look like, having that historical reference, and then beginning to size them correctly or take advantage of more optimal ways to size those workloads. Idle consumption, this is a scenario that I've heard many times, where a development operator or a development entity within a business has, put together an application or some sort of workload that they're testing, going through development, and then forget it. Forget that it's there, get busy, get sidetracked, and then it continues to consume, even though it's not in production and no longer being developed or tested. These things happen. Rogue consumption, of course, is another scenario here where, you have an entity or a group within an organization that spins up a workload without, properly notifying those who are responsible for the cloud budget that they're doing it. And, all of a sudden what happens is the person that's responsible for the cloud budget gets the bill and, is shocked that, the number is what it is because they're not familiar and they're not aware of consumption that's going on within their organization. And that happens all the time. All these things happen all the time. And, as a result, many of our customers today, many of the folks we're talking to are really identifying, really working for needs that they come to us and they say, hey, look, this is what we're looking for. And the first is help us identify the workloads that we have within our current public cloud. We need to understand where those workloads are, be able to understand what that full footprint looks like so we can wrap our arms around it. And then, of course, what they say is then what we want to do once we understand what those workloads are, we want to establish budgets for each of those workloads that are, predictable and consistent. We know that we can budget against it. Then what we need to be able to do is monitor those workloads against those budgets and make sure that those workloads do not go over those budgets and actually be able to proactively govern those workloads so that if indeed they look as if they are going to go above those budgets, we can have the appropriate alerting mechanisms and even maybe the effective governing mechanisms to pause, stop those particular workloads so they don't go and burn our budget. These four areas are very straightforward and, frequently I've realized that the customers that we work with, it's not as if they can't necessarily do this, but always when it comes to our world, it's a question of people, process, and technology, and having the time and the budget to create the people and the process, and not to create the people, to staff or resource the people and to invest in the technology and have the time to develop the processes to really get where you need to go. And, obviously here at Insight, that is our business. We make investments in the people, process, and technology so that we can put forward the appropriate solutions for our customers. And that's what we've done. Today, we provide these things for our customers through InsightCloud Care. And so, my goal now is to articulate the value of InsightCloud Care, what it is and where it fits within the Azure conversation and provide a thought process in terms of how to move forward with us, as this begins to provide value and meaning to you. So InsightCloud Care really has three elements to it that are equal in importance. The first is that it allows you or provides a mechanism for our customers to acquire Azure. So really, honestly, if I had to think of three words that really talk to InsightCloud Care, it's acquire, monitor, and manage. Through InsightCloud Care, you're going to do those three things. So through InsightCloud Care, we help you acquire Azure through a CSP licensing model. And largely speaking, when I talk about the CSP licensing model, what I'm talking about there is it is the mechanism that lets our customers acquire Azure on a consumption basis, meaning that you pay for what you use. And I'll just take a minute, to sort of kind of go through that a bit, because if you've been working with Microsoft for any period of time, you're probably familiar with their more traditional licensing vehicles, such as an enterprise agreement. And or you could call it a volume license agreement. There's lots of different terms. But in their more traditional or past licensing constructs, for you to acquire technology, even Azure, you would make an upfront commitment. And, you may say, okay, well, gosh, we expect to use Azure in this certain capacity over maybe 3 years, and we're going to upfront give you the value of that usage over 3 years. And it could be millions of dollars that you take out of your capital pockets, if you will, and you give it to Microsoft upfront and then hope to consume that value. And frequently you could get caught in a conversation where that upfront commitment would relate to some level of pricing break. What's happened is that Microsoft has realized that many of the customers in the marketplace don't want to buy technology in an upfront way anymore. They want to pay for what they use, just like all of us today do when we subscribe to the cloud. We pay for what we use, or we pay on a subscription basis. It's a way for us to manage our capital in a much more meaningful way, and it makes sense. So Microsoft allows us to be able to offer Azure to our customers on a consumption basis, paying for what you use through CSP, which we present to you as InsightCloud Care for Azure. And what we've done in that is we've said, okay, what we want to do is give our customers Azure, but we also want to build into that experience levels of support. So for our offering, in addition to getting Azure, you also receive support from a team of folks that we call Cloud Success Managers. And these are folks that work with our customers to identify where their workloads are, to understand what the best practices are within Azure, and understand how to map those best practices to your environment. You know, one of the benefits that we have at Insight is that we have thousands and thousands of customers that are using technologies such as Azure, and we begin to see best practices just within our own experiences with them. And we're able to kind of move forward with those best practices for the benefit of our other customers. So we can say, okay, gosh, if you're using this workload under this configuration, you're likely to get a better outcome than the way it is, you know, maybe by default, as an example. So our Cloud Success Management team is part of this experience so that you're able to leverage some of that best practice support. We also provide access to a number of technologies that let you, as a customer, monitor directly your cloud consumption, understand where that footprint is, where all those instances are, and be able to monitor the consumption against preset budgets and all the things that, you know, I mentioned earlier in that slide before when we talk about what market leaders are looking for. So that's technology that we provide to our customers as part of the acquisition of Azure. And then in addition to that, we provide 24/7 administrative technical support with varying degrees. And I'll go through the degrees or the elevated services as you move up the product line. But that, again, in the most entry-level element of InsightCloud Care for Azure, all of this comes with the acquisition of Azure. It is one of our differentiations here with Insight, that we're bundling all this in at a price point that is competitive with anything else that you're going to get from our competitors just selling you Azure. And I'll give you a visual in a second that I think speaks to that. Finally, if you go up the food chain, if you will, the different levels of InsightCloud Care, you finally get to our Premier service. And our Premier service has advisory elements to it that we can provide to you, again, as part of the offering, so that you're able to take advantage on a consultative basis with our business. And that's got, of course, value as well. So a moment ago, I mentioned that, you know, we seek through InsightCloud Care to bundle what we provide to you with support services and structure as part of a pricing that our competitors are just going to deliver the technology. And this slide here is meant to convey that. So I'll try to sort of be very deliberate in articulating this. Today, as you look in the marketplace and you look at acquiring Azure, you can acquire it in lots of different ways, you know, truth be told, right? I mean, I think that's fair to recognize this. You know, you can acquire it not just from us, but you can, you know, acquire it from other solution providers. You can acquire it from Microsoft. Those are all truisms. But as you go into the marketplace and you look at what our competition is offering, what you're going to find is that they're going to offer you Azure. And they're going to offer it to you through a consumption mechanism, much like I explained before, where you pay for what you use. And that's, you know, again, very important and valid. But they're not going to necessarily bundle the other components with that price point. And so what we provide to you, because of our skill and our ability to make these investments, the ability to access Azure at the same cost as our competition is going to provide to you, but we're bundling in, no additional cost, the ability to monitor your consumption and manage it, have access to our Cloud Success Managers, and get that administrative technical support that I talked about before. It is a real differentiation, and it is how we work with our customers to help them optimize their cloud spend. I mean, in the end, you know, as much as we believe in the public cloud and the value that it brings, if you're not getting an optimal return on that investment, it may put us in a situation where you're looking for another solution provider, or you're, you know, maybe moving away from the cloud. And these are all outcomes that we're not interested in. And we embed this value in here so that we really establish a trusted, strategic relationship that helps us move forward. Okay, so now what I'd like to do is really kind of get into some of the, you know, these elements that we embed and that we provide as part of the program itself. And the first is I talked about the cloud success managers, and I talked about their ability to map to best practice recommendations. And, I won't labor on that too much, but what I'd like to do is just sort of walk through what you could expect if you were moving into an InsightCloud Care for Azure experience. As you sat down with a cloud success manager or were engaged by that team, you would do certain things such as document your cloud objectives. These are motions that sometimes, they may seem, laborious or tedious, but they're critical. Being able to sit down and say, okay, look, these are the workloads that we are provisioning, that we are going to go in production with, and this is what our goals and objectives are. Beyond just budget, right? This is what our functional requirements are. This is what our, functional outcomes are. All those things that help us really get visibility to the value that you expect to get out of this process. And of course, that takes us in a bunch of different directions, but it is very critical for us to say where is success and how do we get there. And then, of course, that sort of bleeds to best practice recommendations, because once we understand where your objectives are, it provides us an opportunity to be able to then recommend best practices or to provide thoughts in terms of where you may want to take your original intent. We will then help you and work with you to understand the monitoring tools so that you're configuring them correctly and that you're able to take advantage of the technology. Of course, no technology is perfectly out of the box. Sometimes it takes a little bit of knowledge transfer and subject matter expertise, and we can help you with that and get you to in a position where you can use and leverage those tools. And of course, we're going to do that too. That's part of what we want to do, and we do that through establishing regular reviews. So, perhaps we schedule a review in whatever period of time, and during those reviews, that's really the opportunity for us to sit back and say, all right, this was our original intent. We intended to do this. This is where we are today. What tweaks do we want to make to either our strategy or tactics or even our tooling to provide a better outcome? So that's, part of what we do with our cloud success managers. I'll spend a minute talking about the technology. And, the first thing I'll say is we have many different technologies that we employ for the betterment of our customer. And again, this is one of the perks, benefits of partnering with an organization like Insight, because this is where we make our investments. And these investments come in both development, developing our own proprietary technologies, as well as investing and partnering with best-in-class products that together we're able to create a hybrid optimal environment so that we can work with you to configure visibility into your Azure environment, understand, where those workloads are, again, being able to identify what that entire footprint is, and then set budgets, and then make decisions based on alerting and then proactively governing if spend begins or consumption begins to go beyond established budgets. And, of course, that's got certain implications, and we work through those discussions to make sure that we're all aligned with what we're expecting to happen. And then, of course, one of the things that, in an earlier slide, I talked about oversized workloads, and this last bullet gives me an opportunity to talk through that a bit more. There are smart ways to acquire the cloud based on historical usage, and one of those ways is reserved instances. And, at a very high altitude, really what we're saying here is that there are specific workloads that if you can identify those workloads that are high volume, very consistent workloads, you can make upfront commitments to those workloads and get a reduced price unit that will allow you to get a better cost outcome for those workloads. And, the best way to be able to configure or understand a reserved instance purchase for the future is to understand the past. And again, monitoring gives us the ability to do that. So it could be in the beginning, you're not in a reserved instance, but over time, we're able to identify opportunities to put your work in a reserved instance and reduce your spend. In the end, a lot of this story is, if we assume that X number of folks that we talk to have 20, 30% of their cloud budget wasted or 10% wasted, if we can cut that waste in half through things like this or even eliminate that waste, we're absolutely paying for investment in time and resources that we're giving to our customers. So, these are all very good, notable benefits of what we're doing with InsightCloud Care. When it comes to 24/7 administrative technical support, again, this is included in your purchase. So, as opposed to you may look at a competitive offering and it may just be you're getting Azure. Here, in addition to getting the Cloud Success Manager and the access to monitoring technology, you're also getting 24/7 administrative technical support. And at a very core offering, you can see some of the basic things that we provide here in terms of what you get with this technical support. And it's there for really 2 or 3 reasons. The first is to be able to help our customers configure and establish their existing instances. And then it's also allowing them to, troubleshoot and help move forward in moments of incidents where, they're experiencing a hiccup. Of course, we have very advanced levels of support that get beyond what we're talking about here that are fully comprehensive strategic managed services tied to Azure. That I will talk about in a moment, but, I can sort of sum up all the all the many different benefits of InsightCloud Care by saying that in the end, we also provide these advisory services, which as it relates to InsightCloud Care for Azure, our premier level, and I'll show you the tiers in a second, includes 4 hours of monthly advisory services, which is, we say hands-off, meaning that they're not reaching in and configuring anything through these advisory services, but providing conceptual feedback. Okay, the tiers. So InsightCloud Care for Azure has 3 tiers, and the first of which is Essentials. And then, of course, it moves up to Advanced and Premier, and you can see that. And then a moment ago, I spoke to the fact that we have a full managed service for Azure called Azure Ops, which really stands apart from InsightCloud Care. And managed services for Azure Ops is a completely comprehensive, strategic, proactive managed service, and I will show you some of the features and benefits of that in a minute. But the way this breaks down is, for any of our customers that are seeking to acquire Azure in a consumption model, they begin with InsightCloud Care for Azure Essentials. That's the entry point right there. That's where you get everything. And as you move up the stack to Advanced and Premier, largely speaking, what happens is you get incremental levels of support in Advanced for your infrastructure as a service workloads, and in Premier for your platform as a service workloads. So the way this sort of breaks down is through this chart here. And you can see, obviously in Essentials, and, again, I'll just sort of underscore and reinforce, that's where you start when you buy Azure on a consumption model at Insight. You start with InsightCloud Care for Azure Essentials. And that's where you're going to get the Azure CSP, and that'll allow you to pay for what you use in that consumption model. That's where you get your Cloud Success Manager access. That's where you get access to the monitoring technology. That's where you get the 24/7 administrative support. And you can see that's with our standard SLA. And all of that is with Essentials. And then as you move up to Advanced, then that let's call it stack of capabilities continues to develop, where you're getting enhanced level SLAs, you're getting focused on your infrastructure as a service workloads, and then of course the Premier platform as a service workloads, and then the advisory services. And then finally, the final column over to the right is the managed services for Azure, or what we call Azure Ops. And you can see how comprehensive that offering is. And what we'll see is, sometimes we have customers that begin their journey with us with Essentials, and they'll acquire Azure through CSP, through InsightCloud Care for Azure Essentials, and then in time recognize that they need a full, complete managed services experience, and then we will introduce them to the Azure Ops relationship. So lots of different ways for us to handle that. There's a lot of latitude here, but it's really how we're able to work with our customers in a very thoughtful, methodical, comprehensive Azure journey. Okay, so that is, InsightCloud Care for Azure in a box, or in a nutshell, if you will. My goal here today is to make sure you have a clear idea of what the offering is and how it fits within your decisions around Microsoft and Azure. But what I really want you to know is that I'm here to continue this conversation. So, as you get off this call and as you think about where your journey is, if you want to have another conversation regarding Microsoft, Azure, any of it, I'm very happy to continue this conversation. My email is here. My phone number is here. I'm always interested to have that talk. So with that, I will pause for a second just to see if there's any questions. I don't see any in the chat box, but if you've got, this is last second call. And not seeing any. So with that, I want to thank you again for taking the time. I really appreciate it, and I hope everybody stays safe, and hope you have a great day. Thank you. Amanda?